Elizabeth. 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 Do we need these on?
Oh, that's what you meant. I thought you meant on the chair. Welcome to the America is All In Pavilion. If you are not wearing your headsets, you can hear me better once you do. So I'll give you just a minute to put on some headsets. We have a very exciting event. It is a co-led event by the America's All In Coalition and the U.S. Climate Alliance. And we're really excited to have two fantastic climate leaders come up and talk about their amazing records and sort of the future of the climate movement. So without further ado, we have Ali Zaidi, and then we have Governor Inslee. Ali Zaidi, the climate advisor of the White House, and Washington Jay Inslee. I'm going to introduce Managing Director from the U.S. Climate Alliance to come up and give some intro remarks, but also set the stage for this really important discussion.
Great. Actually, you guys can join me. Oop, sorry. Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you to all of America's All In for having us here in your pavilion and for your continued ongoing partnership. We so value you. The U.S. Climate Alliance, for those who don't know, is a bipartisan coalition of 24 U.S. governors that are working together to drive state-led high-impact climate action. We represent 60% of the U.S. economy and 55% of the population. And last week, we joined forces with America's All In and climate mayors to make a statement after the election, making it very clear that we are not turning back. America's climate leading states, territories, cities, tribes, businesses, and other institutions are not going anywhere. In fact, our commitment and our resolve is only getting stronger. And there is no better duo in all of America to tell you more about the durability, continuity, and strength of our country's commitment to climate action than these two leaders next to me. So once again, please join me in welcoming U.S. Climate Alliance founding member and co-chair of America's All In, Governor Jay Inslee. And Assistant to the President and White House National Climate Advisor, that is a long title, Ali Zaidi. Thank you both so much. It's an honor to be here with you. I know we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's just jump right in. There are a lot of people here in Baku who are feeling a little anxious about the future of climate action in America and what that might mean for potential impacts on global progress. But I'm hoping that you both can open a little bit with your message to the global community. Where do we go from here?
Well, first off, I want to thank you for this invitation. I want to thank Ali for his commitment, his leadership. He got the entire federal government to do the best climate policies in the history of the United States. I think he deserves a round of applause for his leadership to get the President Biden and Vice President. So I've been running around Baku the last couple days with one really, really simple message, which is that we are not stopping the progress that we're making in our states, in our communities, in our counties, in our cities, in our nonprofits. And we have made such tremendous progress joining the already federal government. But now we will not be stopped. We will not be slowed down. We will not be retarded. We will consider the next administration as a speed bump on the road to progress. And I'm committed to that, because we in the states, in the U.S. Climate Alliance, and those who belong to the All In Conference, we believe a certain premise, which is number one, we are masters of our own destiny. Our own destiny is in our hands. And number two, we have the tools in the toolbox to make sure we effectuate a clean energy revolution. And we are doing that with such tremendous success today. As you mentioned, we're 60% of the U.S. Climate Alliance is 60% of the U.S. economy. That is enormous economy. And it harkens back to the very name of our nation, which is United States of America. We're putting states in all capitals now, everywhere we can, because that is the place we can make profound advances, even with the new administration coming in. So those advances, I can tell you, we've had a great victory in my state last Tuesday. Didn't go so well for national policy, but last Tuesday there were these climate deniers who tried to take away the best cap and invest bill in the United States, the most aggressive, the most environmentally just, the most successful, the greatest job creating policy by a state, which is our Climate Commitment Act. And we went to the ballot and we talked about the benefits of the Climate Commitment Act, and the wise, brilliant voters of the state of Washington rejected these miscreants' efforts by a 62 to 38 margin. I can tell you a great success from the state of Washington. And the reason people rejected it is they recognize the benefits that are being realized in my state right now, not 30 years from now, because we're creating jobs right now with the help of all these federal dollars. We've brought state dollars. And the point I want to make is our Climate Commitment Act has generated just about the same investment that the federal government has brought in. And that can only increase. And there's really nothing that Donald Trump, almost nothing, can't say totally, but almost nothing he can do to stop our efforts. Can't stop our capital policies, can't stop our building codes, because building codes are locally determined, can't stop our effort to get people heat pumps and solar panels. He cannot stop those things. So our progress is going to be unabated in the states. I'm not alone. We've got 24 states and governors, and I think it's like 500 organizations in the all-in effort as well. So I quote Walt Whitman, "Be of good cheer. We will not desert you. In Baku, we're with you." That's my message.
First of all, let me just lift up the incredible work that we've seen in the state of Washington. Jay Inslee's been at really the forefront of advocating for an approach to climate that centers around economic opportunity and growth. He was shouting about it in the House of Representatives. He's turned that into steel in the ground, jobs that we're seeing being created all across the state of Washington. And, you know, I'm reminded of a line the president said when he was signing the Inflation Reduction Act. He said, today the American people won and the special interests lost. And what we know is that every time such a victory is won, the special interests don't disappear. They go and they regroup and they come back. And the vindication on the ballot this week, this past week, 62% of the folks in the state saying we're not going back on the progress we've made, speaks to the wisdom of the state of Washington, but it also speaks to the foresight and leadership of Governor Inslee. So let's give him another round of applause. You know, when we structured the Biden climate clean energy approach over the last 4 years, we were focused even before day one on building durability and irreversibility of momentum. That was one of the conversations I had with him when he was running for office. How do we avoid putting together an edifice that then falls apart if it's met with a setback or a shock? And I'm feeling pretty good about the architecture of this transformation. Specifically, and I know we're here in part to talk about what state and local governments and civil society can do together, but part of, I think, the leverage that all of you have is in the architecture of the way this transformation is taking place. So you've got the federal government, which has really applied itself as booster packs on a rocket that is the private sector. And so even if the booster packs fall off, I think in a lot of sectors we've already achieved escape velocity. And in the places we have not, it's just as easy for state and local governments, civil society to step in and help push the rest of the distance. The work, that transformation in trillions of dollars is going to happen as a part of our capital engine in the United States. And I think that's what's so exciting about what we've built over the last 4 years, not just a doubling in the decarbonization pace in the United States, but a path forward that runs in the same direction that businesses want to go. And part of it is the certainty of the direction we're headed. One of the, Jay Inslee brought together a broad coalition to defend his signature law. One of the unlikely allies, if I may, was BP, that actually put up cash to make sure that they weren't reversing course, because destabilization of the regulatory infrastructure actually upsets the massive capital investment that companies have made all across the economy. And now fast forward to this week, you've got ExxonMobil saying maybe America shouldn't pull out of the Paris Agreement. Maybe it should not be destabilizing not just the IRA. That maybe is the most obvious thing you would hear a company say. The CEO of ExxonMobil said, maybe don't destabilize the regulatory infrastructure because we've started to build against this. So I think there's just a real reimagination of the role of the private sector, not as a thing to be pushed down upon, but actually the rocket around which we put our boosters. One of the things, it's hard not to, on the doorstep of a new Trump administration, think about what it felt like the last time we were on the doorstep of a Trump administration. Governor Inslee talked about the 24 states that are part of the alliance, but now rewind to when he and others launched the Climate Alliance. Wasn't that big. So think about the expansion of the coalition that's taken place over the last 4 years and the depth of it. You've got now legislatures lined up with more and more governors, giving them the ability to run far and run fast. As I think about the path forward, I'll close on this comment. There are places where I do think we've hit that escape velocity: power sector, transportation sector. There are places where we definitely have not. The industrial sector, agriculture, and manufacturing these technologies, those will be the places where we need even more attention going forward from civil society, from nonprofit organizations, advocates, and of course from state, local, and tribal leaders.
Thank you. And quite literally, the U.S. Climate Alliance, as you mentioned, when we started, was 3 states, and we were built to address what is to come, and we're much stronger now. So I appreciate that. You talked a little bit about the investment that has happened in the last 4 years. Tremendous, once in a generation investment through both the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. These both laid increasingly large opportunities for the business sector to invest in energy, and you both into the energy boom. But the impacts of both of those have really only just started to be seen in our communities and to be seen on the ground. What do you think is the opportunity going forward for their full impact to really be felt in our communities?
I think the visible difference is showing up in communities around the country today. I think that only expands over time. there are some hallmarks of, I think, what successful transformation looks like. The first, and I think this is above and beyond, is to translate it as vigorously into family supporting middle class jobs. I was in Southwest Pennsylvania with the United Mine Workers, who kept the lights on for 100 plus years in the United States, but had started to feel quite left behind as the transformation has taken place. It was so exciting to see those mine workers now have launched an apprenticeship program, the first of its kind, to cap wells that had been abandoned, and now launching a training program to on-ramp people into making that cathode active material that goes into a cathode, that goes into a battery, that goes into an electric vehicle. Those same mine workers that kept the lights on for 100 years, now turning the lights on in a clean energy revolution. That's, I think, an essential part of the transformation. I think the second is you got to be purposeful about the broader community benefits and how those get structured. A key element of that is the jobs. Another part of it is really working with the community, in particular to bring uplift to places that have seen the pressure either of globalization or the burden of cumulative impacts of pollution really hamper progress and take opportunity away. One of the big pushes through the Department of Energy and others has been to require community benefit agreements as part of our grant aid. But as this sort of moves from a government-backed enterprise to one where the private sector carries forward, especially, and I'm just real talk, in a world where ESG has sort of become disfavored, we've got to have a conversation about how we create those structures, which I think build more social license around going fast. And you see this in, for example, the offshore wind transformation, where they built out a staging port in New York that brings opportunity back to an environmental justice community that's seen jobs go away and has been staring on the front lines, breathing in the pollution from dirty industrial facilities, citing the opportunity in those places and showing that visible difference, I think will help us go faster in this transformation. And we will find joy in unexpected places in that. I have been talking about something that has just always brings a smile to my face. Fervo, you may have heard of. It's this new enhanced geothermal company, not your grandpa's geothermal. They're building a 2 gigawatt facility in Utah in a town of 1,500. And there's a place called Scotty's Diner there. A year ago, they got a call from the construction crew, town of 1,500, that they wanted 40 burgers and 40 fries. The owner was like, hold up, it will take me an hour to fill it, but in the time since has doubled her staffing. In unexpected ways, this economic opportunity is going to cascade through. The owner of the diner calls it the geothermal thing. But it's the thing that gives her hope, and it gives her pride, and it gives her a sense of connectivity to this amazing thing her country is helping stand up, and that is a brighter, better, clean energy future.
Well, I was so wrapped up with Ali's discourse, I can't remember what the question was, so I'm going to kind of riff here for a moment, but I will make some attempt. Look, I think it's too late for Donald Trump to unwind this progress. And he would like to say it's not too late, but it's too late. There are too many places where jobs are in the field being created today. There are too many congressmen that recognize and look people in the eyes and realize their job today is dependent on completion of the Inflation Reduction Act for them to roll this back. And he is going to get a lesson. It will be a bitter lesson for him, which is that once you have jobs created in a congressional district, that member of Congress, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever, fights like hell to keep them. And he is, in my opinion, Ali may be more pessimistic than me, is not going to be able to roll back the progress that he has instituted in these jobs. Because they're there today. I look at talk about transformation. You got Scotty's, I got Denny's or something that's at least as big in Moses Lake, Washington. So Moses Lake, Washington was a rural agriculture area. It's about 130 miles east of Seattle. It was known for sugar beets and a little bit of wine. Now we've had a guy I met 20 years ago that had 5 people working for him trying to figure out how to make ultracapacitors. Now he's going to have several hundred people in an 8-story building that he's building, which has the most advanced silicon anode battery company in the world. And right next door to him is his competitor that also is making a silicon anode battery, thanks a little bit to Ali, with some help for us. And those jobs are today, and those are steel worker jobs, iron worker jobs, IBW workers, Teamsters, you name it. You can't rip that out of a community now. We're there, I believe. And obviously it's not just construction workers, it's advanced manufacturing people. And that's why I love the U.S. Climate Alliance, because we've jointly committed to apprenticeships to get people in these advanced manufacturing trades. And I can't remember the number. Is it 1 million or 2 million?
It's 1 million.
1 million jobs. So the U.S. Climate Alliance is committed, and we're delivering. We've committed to 20 million heat pumps, and we are ahead of the curve for the U.S. Climate Alliance states to move forward. So I think we're there at escape velocity for job creation in the United States amongst these states. So I could not be more pleased. So what was your question?
You nailed it.
Did I address it at all?
Follow up. Yep, I've got
You got one.
So you talked a little bit about the Climate Commitment Act, how it was under attack, and you said it won't be the last time. You were successful in bringing together a broad coalition and really delivering the message on what this brings to Washingtonians across your state. As other states and local communities see these kinds of attacks in their communities, what's the advice that you would give to them?
Get me on your side. How's that? That might help. Also get the 500 organizations in my state, the broadest political coalition in the history of the state of Washington, from tribal communities to minority communities to business leaders, big and small. It was an incredible coalition. I do want to note this one thing. One of the successes we've had is embracing environmental justice in everything we do in our climate provisions, not just the Climate Commitment Act. So we've dedicated 35 to 40% of all the proceeds will go to the communities who've been swallowing this pollution for so long. Most frequently communities of poverty and color, and 10% additionally going to the tribal communities. This is both the just thing to do, and obviously it's an important thing to do to build political support for these efforts. So I would recommend them taking a look at Washington's law and see how it's been so successful. Now, we have had the advantage of being second, not first, because California went first for their industrial cap and trade system, and we learned some things from them. We built more environmental justice into the first provision. We had measures that dealt with some costs in the auction. And now we're going to hopefully join California and Quebec in a 3-state coalition to try to stabilize some of the markets for carbon. So I think there's a great lesson from Washington State to not be afraid of climate deniers and move forward. And it's a little bit about the jobs. Once people have a benefit, it's like hell to get it back. Social Security, the Republicans have been trying to kill it for 80 years. Obamacare, they've tried to repeal it 20 times and have failed. Once Americans have something, they don't give it up. And that has to do in the cap and trade system, which is essentially recycling $3.5 billion a biennium back to Washingtonians. They don't want to give that up. And once we made that clear, we're a lot stronger on the climate message. That's what really worked.
Well, congratulations. We were so glad to see the outcome. So, Special Advisor, the election is over, but the administration is still in office for another few months. What can we expect to see in this period?
Well, you will see us sprinting through the tape. This week we rolled out a strategy for how we triple nuclear deployment in the United States. We've already seen the president's leadership accelerate progress on advanced reactors and technologies as far out as fusion, as well as bring back plants out of retirement. I went to Western Michigan, where I met a retired worker who had come back to a retired plant to train up the next generation of nuclear plant workers at Palisades. That's happening and it's underway. You saw from us announce a new set of methane actions that brings the tally just in 2024 to over 100 actions under the Biden administration to help curb that super pollutant. And you'll see us continue to take action not only on that front, but other super pollutants like N2O and HFCs over the coming months. You'll see the president go to the Amazon later this week. I guess next week, time is fuzzy, Sunday. I'll be there with him and talking about another pillar of how we've approached climate action in the United States and around the world, which is to lean into nature-based solutions, and in particular to lift up the indigenous communities that have been our essential partner in harnessing nature as a powerful response to the crisis that we're seeing, not just something to be conserved, but something to be harnessed as a tool to help us push back against not only the climate crisis, but the biodiversity crisis that is taking place as well. You'll see the administration, I think, continue to make progress on some of these workforce initiatives. I second the governor's intuition about the staying power and the durability of this agenda and this strategy really being rooted through the jobs. And one of the places we've been able to excite a new generation is through our American Climate Corps, and we continue to add folks to that push. We're obviously wrapping up the analytical process to develop our nationally determined contribution, which we're engaging in particular with states and subnational leaders to figure out how we keep America not just all in, but on track to achieve the 1.5 degree ambition that the world needs to keep moving towards. Climate change is not going to go on pause because of a U.S. federal election, and neither can climate action. So we've got to figure out ways to keep pulling the pollution out of the sky, putting money in people's pockets and clean energy into our economy, and we'll absolutely do that.
You know,
Let's try this.
we'll just use this one. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. So you are both seasoned COP veterans, and you've done this a number of times. You know so well the value of these gatherings. So I'm curious, what are your goals for this COP? And in addition to that, as we look to the future and we look to the role that subnationals will play in the international community going forward, what are some of the changes that need to happen with UNFCCC and other leaders to really incorporate the power and the value of subnationals at the international and global level?
Well, first off, we haven't quite accomplished this, but we intend to. We intended to make an international crime subject to Interpol prosecution to use the term subnational when we're really supranationals. So we got to solve that problem to begin with.
Noted.
And I really do believe that, because, and I think Ali would agree with me, states can do things that national governments cannot do. And it's true in almost every democracy, because smaller units can be more flexible and they can do things that may not have consensus on a national basis. We've demonstrated that in Washington State with this incredible success by the Biden administration and Vice President Harris. But we were able to do things on top of that as well. And so I do believe that we should think of ourselves as supranationals. And one of the things we're moving towards is to, in future COPs, to embrace the power of those jurisdictions more in a more visible way and a more tangible way in these COP process. The Secretary General is helping us on that. He just convened a meeting today with supranationals, which I think was productive. So I think we're moving in that direction. For me, on a personal level, I come to COP in part to be inspired because there's something about being part of the larger humanity that is inspiring to me. To see all of humanity with all our texture and color and languages is an inspiring thing to know we're all working together. That hasn't always happened in human history. And when you think about it, this is a great time to be alive, and this is a great time to be here, because there's nothing that's ever happened in human history that is more unifying than climate change. There is nothing in human history, literally since a species, where we each have the same stake and the same way to solve the problem, except this one. And COP is the best avenue we have for dealing with these problems. And I get inspired seeing people and listening to them. I listened to Mayor Sharif, Mayor of Kuala Lumpur today, who just had these dynamite ideas she's dealing with in Kuala Lumpur. That's inspiring to me. I want to go home and ramp up my efforts after listening to her. So we're humans. We're affected by each other. Now, and why I came basically is we don't want the world to get down in the dumps about Donald Trump's ascendancy. We understand the concern about it. We understand having a climate denier in the White House at this stage is most disappointing. But we need to pick ourselves up, to be aggressive, ambitious, and realize that action is the best antidote to despair. And when we do that, great things are going to happen. I believe we are going to skin this cat. And when I say skin this cat, I don't mean in Springfield, Ohio, with cats. So I don't.
We could go so many directions from there, but I'll return to the top of the governor's remarks about the role of supranationals. I think the United Nations has really started to structure in over the course of the last decade the role of state and local governments. Under Mike Bloomberg's leadership, for example, working with the United Nations, understanding that mega cities produce such demand that they can transform the entire economy of a country if they line up with incredible ambition. And we've seen that happen. We've seen that transformation take place. At the state level, it's not only that some of the stuff can happen at the state level. In a lot of jurisdictions, a lot of the stuff must happen at the state level. To me, the coming to this venue, there are two sort of big drivers. The first is implementation. We have a global community that has achieved consensus around a lot of things, but the consensus is only as good as the change on the ground. And one of the things that is a consistent theme as you walk around, meet either with heads of state or local and state governments or civil society, is that there are real impediments and barriers to change. Whether it's permitting and siting, whether it's the supply chains that limit the capacity of interconnection on our grids, whether it's working through the very real issues of carbon management, whether it's building the measurement, monitoring, verification regime that helps us underwrite our investment in nature. We are running into common challenges, and we don't need to invent the wheel in every jurisdiction. Part of coming together means that we can run through the wall of implementation more elegantly and once. So that's, I think, one of the big benefits. And our work, for example, around methane emissions reductions, where we've now built a community of over 150 countries starting from just a few at the first COP under President Biden in Glasgow, I think has helped populate how do you build out those practices and implement and execute more efficiently, more effectively, more justly. The second is, I think, a cousin of what Governor Inslee said, and that is, I think there's just an incredible dosage of hope that you get when you see people from so many different walks coming together. We're just jumping out of the frying pan of the U.S. elections, where if you look at the magic board on cable news, we are sliced and diced in so many different ways. And when you're here with countries that we have a lot of disagreements with, but still locked up in the same set of rooms, grappling with the same set of facts, it's the boundaries, the borders, the differences start to peel away. The enormity of the challenge becomes very visible, but also the clarity around how we do and can come together. I'm reminded so often, despite the zigs and zags, that in 2015 when we got together at a COP just like this one, we were on track for a world that was going to go to 5, 6, 7, maybe more degrees of warming. Now, we're nowhere near where the science tells us we need to go, but we're at a fraction of that, half, maybe less, in terms of the trajectory that projects out. We've got more work to do, but we've got a ratchet that works. We've got a collective that actually can come together and solve the problem. That's a dosage of hope and of togetherness that I think is helpful to reattach to after political discourse sometimes, I think, tries to shock us into corners.
So, no. So, you all have been a driving force behind climate action in America for years, and you have shown incredible leadership. You have been so forward-thinking. So, I want to ask you to take a moment to look back and talk about what actions or moments stand out in your time in office that you're most proud of.
This is difficult because Allie and I are so humble. It's very, very difficult. Well, a couple things. I've got other people's engaged in this effort. I have staff members here, Annalise and Becky Kelly, who are here. Raise your hands. Where are you two? Round of applause for these two because they have led Washington State in the climate energy. And, you know, inspiring other people to get involved in this fight has been a pleasure. I would say the thing that at the moment sitting here I'm most proud of is in 1992 I ran for Congress in a very Republican area. Nobody gave me a chance. And I went back, I was looking for in my old junk drawer the other day, and I saw my first brochure I ever had when I ran for office for Congress. And point number 2 was fight climate change. This is 1992. And nothing's changed since 1992. We have improved our prospects, and we have become more and more concerned of the rapidity where we have to go. And so this has been a constant with me, which is to wake up every single morning to figure out what I can do to help my grandkids. And to me, this is a very personal issue. I guess why I'm proud of myself in our joint efforts in our state is I got 6 grandkids. And I want their lives to be as rich as mine and as healthy. And the only way that's going to happen is if our generation of leadership and communities really solve this problem. So yeah, we've had a good run for about 30 years. By the way, I want to point out, I don't think the administration, Allie, the president, vice president, get enough credit for their work on methane. Methane is the killer app, so to speak, of climate change. There's some new reports came out last week that there's an accelerated rate of methane that we can't fully understand. It might involve metabolic effort of bacteria that ends up with organic emissions that are not caused directly by humans, except we're causing climate change. Things get warmer and wetter, so you get more bacterial action and you get more methane. This is a personal terror of mine, And I just want to thank Allie and the President, Vice President for your leadership on methane. It's been fantastic, Allie. I really appreciate what you're doing.
I have to fanboy for a second and just say I appreciate being put on the same team as Jay Inslee, but I very much feel like the point guard who throws the ball to the star center to score every time. So, so consider me among the folks you've inspired over the years. You know, for me, it's really all about seeing that sense of hopefulness, national mission, togetherness that I've seen reflected back over the course of the last several years. And just to give you a few snapshot moments where I've felt that, halfway through the administration, around the time we weren't sure we would pass an Inflation Reduction Act, we got together all of the appointees in the federal government who were working on climate change. And I've been in the federal government before. Usually that's not the biggest group in the world, but there were 400 folks on that Zoom call, from the General Services Administration wanting to buy cleaner products, to our Health and Human Services folks who were integrating environmental justice into our public health strategy, our Department of Defense making our bases more resilient to a changing climate, our Agriculture Department helping farmers get a new source of revenue. So just seeing that team spirit show up in such a broad and big way in not a imagined government, but the real one representing the American people was just uplifting. I felt it again. We were in Triangle, Virginia, heloed in with the president to what was a log cabin built for recreation by the Civilian Conservation Corps, turning a page back to a history and a yesteryear, and surrounded by young people who, unlike that CCC, did look like America. Unlike that CCC, were going to be on a path to good paying union jobs, enough wages and benefits to support a family. And this sense that that hopefulness, that sense of inspiration was grounded in a real national achievement, that we had not shrunk our imaginations over the decades. People often look back at the Hoover Dam and the CCC and think of that as the time when America did and imagined big things. But to be in that space, that green knoll, surrounded by people who were going to do something orders of magnitude bigger. Think about last year, you know, and the year before. If you take the energy that's been deployed in the Biden administration, 50 Hoover Dams worth of clean energy built, connected onto the grid, and now the Civilian Climate Corps transformed into an American Climate Corps meeting the moment. Again, that inspiration being reflected back. To me, that's been the thing, that's been the octane, the drive to keep going, is to see people coming together and doing the work of uplift. That's the most sacred, the most special space you can be in, is when you get to be in service of people coming together and doing the work of uplift. And I've gotten to just be part of that again and again and again and again, and surrounded by such an amazing team. A funny moment, so my wife actually assembled that first Zoom gathering of climate people because she led the transition on, or led climate on the transition. But we weren't married then. We were just colleagues. Then we negotiated Build Back Better, and then we thought maybe the next step was to get together. And anyway, so fast forward, I get married. This is just to give you a sense of the people I get to work with. So we get married, and this has nothing to do with climate change. Get married, and I have a wedding ring and it's the first week of me wearing the wedding ring, and I'm sitting in my office, and I think, wait, it's not there. Oh, shit. And I had just come back from the bathroom, so I ran back to the bathroom in the West Wing, and Steve Ricchetti, who's the counselor to the president, leads his entire legislative drive, is in the bathroom. He says, "What's wrong?" He looks at me, realizing I'm horrified. And I said, "I think I lost my wedding ring." And he turns the trash can upside down, and we're shoveling through the trash can looking. I did find it's here. I found it. But it just gives you I know it has nothing to do with climate, but it gives you a sense of how together and in it and selfless and not determined by your rank or class or whatever, but this Biden team that I've gotten a chance to be part of is just everyone's got everyone's back on the biggest stuff, pushing through when we didn't feel like we were going to pass the Inflation Reduction Act, to the, not in my world, the smallest thing, but in the scheme of things, helping your colleague dig through the men's bathroom trash can to find their wedding ring. It's just been a joyful time these last 4 years.
Allie, I'm a little disappointed in you, I have to say, because you missed the metaphor in that story, which is that you and the Biden administration find gold in difficult circumstances, like climate change. Platinum. And that's what you're doing, or platinum, whatever.
Oh. Can you hear me? Yes? Yes? Do I need to? Okay, I will channel my inner Britney Spears or Pink, or choose your favorite Taylor Swift female vocalist. All right, as we wrap up this conversation, I so appreciate the message of hope that you all have shared. And one of the things that I said to my team the morning after the election was, look, I don't know what the future holds, but I know how we get through this is together. And so I want to hear a little bit from you as we all close. You know, what gives you hope? Governor Inslee, you talk a ton about your grandchildren and that they're the reason you're doing this. I know many of us have children and they're the reason we're doing this. So what gives you hope for the future ahead, and what can we expect to see from you all ahead?
Well, it's pretty damn simple. Hope is the only option we got right here. Who the hell wants to give up and just think the planet's going to burn up? That's a ridiculous way to look at this. We have to be hopeful because our survival depends on it. And it's also really good for our mental health. And we need this right now, frankly. People have, frankly, they're feeling a little anxiety since the last election. We feed on it. We know how to do it. And by the way, hope is not a plan. Maybe it's a synonym, so to speak. You generate hope through action. You don't generate action through hope. You generate hope through action. And so when you go home and talk to people who are anxious right now, just go find a place to take action. It might be your friend doing something in the city council, figuring out how to get electric drives in your utility system. It might be going to get somebody elected. Taking action generates hope, and that's what we need right now. Now, the standard answer would be technology's coming on like crazy. The scales of economy are kicking in and driving down the price of solar and wind. Fusion is coming on. We got all these new technologies. We got brilliant young people doing this. That's the standard answer. But the real answer is it's because we, as humanity, care about our kids, ultimately. Every culture cares about our kids in this building right now. And bottom line, if we connect people to their kids, we will win this battle.
Part of it is that, I think, intergenerational element. Part of it is, if we just boil it down to what's narrowly in front of us, climate is very responsive. Climate action helps improve our public health. It improves our economic standing. It helps alleviate not just election anxiety, but economic anxiety. It's the next job. It's the paycheck that's stable. And it's connected to this national mission and purpose. I think as I've been decoding where the country might be, the clarion call has been around an economic agenda that gives people a sense of purpose and place. And the thing that makes me hopeful is we finally, and it's taken a lot of iterating. Governor was talking about how as they did their climate bill second after California, that they actually did a lot of iterating and focused more on communities, on uplift, and so on. We've done a lot of iterating over the course of 29 COPs. And in the process, I think we've found an approach to climate action that draws on that moral drive embedded in that intergenerational relationship that Governor Inslee described, and is propelled by a very purposeful economics that delivers in places for people and in visible ways. And that for me is the confidence I carry in and out of this COP. We know how to do it. We've put proof points in the world. We're going to keep chasing after it.
Well, thank you both. On behalf of America and specifically the U.S. Climate Alliance, thank you so much for your leadership, your continued leadership. We are so excited to see how you take your leadership to the next level and where you go next. But please join me in a round of applause thanking them.